Aloha. Hey everyone, I'm Lisa G, Hawaii. I say that because there are a few Lisa G's out there. And hello if you are here with us tonight. And thank you for having me be here. I'm happy to share. And yeah, so that was nice to start with meditation. And it reminds me of something I heard today in another meeting where we were talking about higher power and how does it work? And there was a quote from Bill W. when he was being interviewed and asked about this and said, well, how does it work with this higher power? And he says, very well, thank you. And I thought that was so smart. I just thought that was very funny because I don't understand how it works. But I know that it does. And I know that the promises, I'm already seeing them in my life. I've been here 18 months in the rooms. It's a miracle that I made it here. Something that happened is a relapse in my story. And when that happened, I don't know, about 6 months into program or so, I fell into a depression. And I just I was fighting it because in my brain, I had a head full of program and in my belly was just junk food. So I just let myself, I accepted it. I practiced what I call radical self-acceptance of where I'm at in the moment. And I let myself have that time. And what happened, what my experience, my point is that by allowing it to be there and not trying to fight so hard, my disease, my illness, it wasn't so appealing. It started to lose its edge that it had for me, its thrill. And what brought me out of it was being in that acceptance and then being of service. So I took a phone call, even though I didn't feel like taking a phone call that day. And it was somebody in tears over their fourth step that needed to share. And a light switch went in my brain. I came from this place of being in relapse and being in depression to how can I help? Well, I'm here to help. What can I do? And it wasn't a conscious thought. It just happened automatic. And that's part of what I've seen happening with higher power, with the steps, working the program. What I also came to understand about my illness is that it's not going anywhere. And all of the fighting and resisting against it was taking up a lot of my time and energy and thoughts. So I decided to make friends with my illness. And I named it. My illness name is Sephi. It stands for a spiritual, emotional, physical health illness. So Sephi. And rather than having to resist this, I want to acknowledge that Sephi's going to be with me for the rest of my life. And what can I do to make friends with this part of myself that is always trying to battle? So what's happened is I've been able to hear when that food voice starts to call, and I've been able to call on Sephi and say, hey, I hear you. You're being heard. We're actually going to do this, A, B, and C. We're not going to do, that other choice. And it's made a huge difference in my recovery. So that part, and then understanding that what I have is an illness, that it is a fact. It is not a fault. So it's not my fault that I have a disease or an illness. It is a fact. And accepting that was huge for me, to let go of the blame or shame, whatever it is, or it was that I carry around that, having that illness. So one of the ways that I'm able to stay sane, because I came into the program pretty insane, and without a higher power, and dieting and intermittent fasting and doing everything I could to change my diagnosis of prediabetes, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, all of these diagnoses that I had just gotten a few months prior to finding OA. I was in the midst of healing myself. And so it was really hard for me to take the first step, because I'm no longer pre-diabetic. My cholesterol is great. I still have high blood pressure, so that we're working on that. And so to admit that I was powerless over food was such a challenge, because I had just healed myself of all these things, right? And then since I had no higher power when I got here, how could I take steps 1, 2, and 3, especially step 3, and to turn my will and my life over? I didn't understand that until someone explained to me, there's a different way to think about it. My will is my thoughts. It's what am I focused on? What am I desiring? And my life, well, that's my action. So if I'm turning my thoughts and my actions towards my higher power, what does that look like? And how do I do that on a daily basis? So one of the ways is through what I call prayer and air. So I've got to do some breathing. I've got to say prayers throughout the day. Like, I need that conscious contact, but I also need constant contact. And that's part of what allows me to kind of be a little more sane now. Like I said, it's a miracle that I found this program. I'm technically a 100-pounder. I did gain back some weight and lost it again. So we'll see what happens with that. That's up to God, where that's going. What I've noticed is, by working the steps and working with other people. So working with others is so important to me. And I love that in the big book, that quote of, I can't quote it, but it's something about that nothing will so much ensure immunity from alcoholism as working with other alcoholics. Yeah. And so sponsoring or just outreach. And I love reaching out to newcomers. That's a part of my program. Outreach with you guys. I'll put my number in the chat. I'm happy to take and make calls. And so coming here into the rooms, for the first time in my life, I heard people saying the secret things that I do with food out loud. I didn't know that was going to happen. I didn't know I had an eating disorder. I just thought I needed to exercise and lose some weight, and that I needed to get healthy and stop this diabetes that was trying to kill me. Because it does want to take me out, the disease, but it will settle for me just being miserable. Don't get me wrong. I don't have to die. I could just be miserable. And I'm not looking to be that anymore. So when I lost my train of thought, when I got into program, I don't know what I was going to say. The way that I found it was through going through some old journals, about 20 years old, and a little sticky note came flying out, and I picked it up, and it said, Overeaters Anonymous. Extra weight on your body might be to keep men away. And it said that you don't have to be big to be safe. And I didn't remember ever going to Overeaters Anonymous. So I found this little sticky note and I put it up on the wall. And this was right around the time I got the diagnosis from my doctor. And I was doing the dieting, the fasting, and the eating, whatever I could to heal myself. And for whatever reason, I was then led to look up Overeaters Anonymous online. And sure enough, I found a Facebook page. I live in a little tiny town in Hawaii, and there was a face-to-face meeting. And that was, yeah, it's no longer there. But so I went to this meeting and I started going every week. I knew there was no one there who could be a sponsor. I didn't know what the 12 steps were. I didn't know what a sponsor was. I didn't know what recovery meant. I just knew that it wasn't there for me. But I kept going anyway. And then I came home after a few weeks, just really depressed and again, like not able to take these first 3 steps and not even knowing how to do this and needing a sponsor, knowing I needed support. And I looked it up online, and the next thing I knew, I was in a Zoom room and I went to 4 meetings that day, and I got a sponsor that day, and I started working the program immediately. I did a deep dive, 90 meetings in 90 days. Again, I started hearing other people echo my story, and it was so brave of everyone that when I got to hear them. And then I got to have the courage to say some of my own truth and some of my own story. And what happened in my home life with friends and family is people started pretty immediately within the first few months saying, there's something different. You just seem lighter. And they weren't talking about my body. Like there's something is changed in you. And a good friend, one of my great friends that has known me for over 20, 25 years, they disclosed to me about an eating disorder that I had no idea of. And I actually ended up 12-stepping this person without knowing what that meant. That I was being the example of what it looked like to be in recovery and what it looked like to have conscious contact. And somebody saw that and said, oh, I want that. And they started going to OA meetings and finding their own way in it. It's just another miracle. You know, I used to be really depressed and pretty angry. I can still get depressed and angry at things, but I'm not the way that I was 2 years ago. I'm not the way I was a year ago or 6 months ago. Honestly, since I have been working with a new sponsor and have finally learned a 10th step that really works for me, that I have, and it's been reflected back to me from other people in my life, that it's really put a jump into my recovery, a real strength. And I spent about a year trying to find a 10 step that would work for me. I just didn't resonate with any of these long 2-page forms. And I didn't have too much time to do that every time I get irritated. Because it could happen 10 times a day. And so learning this process that was very simple for me, finally, a way that worked for me to work the steps, right? Because it works for me doesn't mean it's going to work for you, and vice versa. And so I've really seen a settling. I mean, my emotions and my feelings are there, and they can be quicksand. And we're told in the big book that we don't struggle, that we relax, we take it easy, we don't struggle. And so the emotions, instead of becoming quicksand, like when you are like trying to, struggle and get out of it, they can be more like water. And thoughts are connected with the emotions, where if I'm not struggling, I'm not fighting so much, the thoughts come, but then they can dissipate. And that's part of meditation practice for me, is allowing the thoughts to be there. And every time they come, it brings me back to the present moment. So it's not bad that I still have thoughts while I meditate. It's always bringing me back every single time. to the present moment. And I think that moment is over. Thank you so much. It's great to be here.